Traditional authoring and publishing systems have significant inefficiencies and issues that can be resolved with a dynamic publishing system. In a traditional system, a lot of an author's time can be wasted recreating information that already exists, updating information that's been copied and pasted over and over again. And that's if the author can find all the occurrences of the information. Time is wasted formatting documents. We'll dig into that more in just a moment. And with multi-channel publishing, if you're publishing content as a PDF file, but you also want the content in web format, you can spend a lot of time converting the content to HTML and formatting it. Bottom line, a lot of time is wasted that could be avoided. Statistics from the Society for Technical Communication state that authors typically spend about 30-35% of their time formatting. With a dynamic publishing system, an author writes content but does not format the content. It's just text. The cost of formatting is eliminated. So that's an immediate savings that can happen when you author in a dynamic publishing system. This applies to all types of authors: technical writers, marketing writers, subject matter experts. And this idea is known as separation of content from format. The formatting is handled by the publishing engine. And this is true whether you're publishing PDF or HTML or for the iPhone or iPad. In this example, the content was originally published as all Courier font. Titles were published in black. We've modified the style sheet so that all the titles are navy color and the text is in Arial. We did not change the source content, just the style sheet back at the publishing engine. Much less expensive than changing the formatting of the source content. In addition to eliminating the cost of formatting, another way which you can save is it can occur in the content reuse. When you author in a dynamic publishing system, you can create reusable modular content. And we often refer to this as authoring content components. These modules can be created at many levels: paragraphs, sections, subdocuments, and chapters. For example, we reuse content in multiple versions of our own user guide for our products. We create many different versions of our Quark XML author user guide, and in those guides, many of the chapters are identical reused content. And within the other chapters, many of the topics are identical. So reuse of chapters and reuse of topics. Reuse can occur at the level you need it to fit your publications and your content and business requirements. So how can we prove the savings? We'll start by looking at a process in which content is not reused. So we have here a swim lane diagram that shows an author creating some content that is workflowed or handed off to a technical reviewer who reviews the content for technical accuracy. And then if they approve it, then it's handed off or workflowed to an editor who performs the editing and proof process on that content. And then ultimately, the content is manually published. In this process, where there's no content reuse, the author has to create 100% of the content. In a process with reuse, the author may only have to create 85% of the content, and then the remainder is reusable content that the author finds and inserts. But depending on what you are documenting and how similar your publications are, the reuse percent could be higher. What if the author only had to create 60% of the content and the remaining 40% could be completed with reusable content? That's a significant savings. Now think about the types of authors that can create content in an organization. What if the author is a financial analyst, a semiconductor engineer, a lawyer? What levels of salaries are we talking about for these subject matter experts? Think about 5 hours of their work reduced to 3 for a highly paid SME. These savings can be significant just in the authoring task. the next slide. This chart shows that as the percent reuse increases there along the horizontal axis, the overall cost of a document decreases. The blue line shows the cost without reuse, where the cost is consistent or stays high. All the content is created new from scratch. But the green line represents the cost with reuse and shows the cost going down as the percent reuse increases. The savings are not just limited to the authoring task. The cost of the technical review task is also reduced. In the old process where there's no content reuse, the reviewer has to review 100% of the content. Let's look at a process with reuse. The technical reviewer is reviewing new content, but a lesser amount, 60% instead of 100%. And for the contextual review of the reused content, they can see which content is reused because it has a shaded background or some other visual indicator. They don't have to perform a full technical review of that content. They already know it is technically accurate. It's just a check of whether the reused content can be used within this context. So overall, the process with reuse has a much lower cost than the process without reuse. The cost of the editing and proofing task is also reduced. In the old process where there's no content reuse, the editor has to proof 100% of the content. In a process with reuse, the editor has a lesser amount of new content to edit and proof, 60% instead of 100%. The reused content has already been edited and proofed, so they only have to perform a contextual review of the reused content. And the editing and proofing process with reuse is therefore much lower cost than the process without content reuse. Now that you've seen the savings possible with content creation, let's think about content maintenance. When you reuse content and that content needs to be changed, you simply update the reusable content, and then all the publications that incorporate that reusable content can be automatically republished. The costly alternative is to find all occurrences of a piece of content, update each piece, and then manually republish those documents. And that's if you can find all the occurrences. The savings for translation is very similar to the savings in authoring with reuse. When you submit content for translation, a translator charges you for each piece of content, each piece of unique content. Typically, translation software performs this evaluation, looks for uniqueness at the sentence level. If two sentences are different by only one character, whether it's a space or a letter or a comma, it's flagged different, and you'll be charged for both sentences. So to save money, use reusable content as much as possible. Then, when it's evaluated by translation software, the reused content is determined to be an exact match, that is, identical to existing content. Exact matches are not translated and are therefore free. The higher the percent reuse, the lower your translation costs will be. In addition, translators charge extra when they have to translate content that's embedded in traditional desktop publishing files. When you separate content from format, this extra cost is eliminated. So multiply that extra amount by the number of languages you translate to, and that's an additional savings. The savings with content reuse and dynamic publishing, they're not exponential, but the savings do cascade from one process to another, and it has a multiplying effect. So it's very easy to see what the business case is for content reuse and using an authoring and a dynamic publishing system.